Hi, everybody. It's Stephanie Gunning, and I'm back with another interview with one of my clients, the nonfiction spiritual writer, Susan Nicholas, MD. As you can see, this is the cover of her book, The Duality of Being, Perspectives from Multidimensional Travel. Welcome to my little broadcast here. Susan, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you, Stephanie.
It is a pleasure to be with you. And I want to introduce you to listeners, viewers, because you are such an interesting person. And your story is a one-of-a-kind story in my experience. I've known people who've traveled out of body, but never quite the way you describe it or what you've learned and communicate about it. So let me just quickly read a few snippets from your bio. So this is Dr. Susan Nicholas, MD, MBA. That in itself is rare. How many doctors and business, masters of business actually become spiritual teachers? Very few in my experience. You may be in the Nita Morjani.
Yeah.
So Susan is the founder of the Human Consciousness Consortium. She's the author of this book and a forthcoming children's book. She's a Reiki energy healer, a conscious life coach, and a public speaker on topics of consciousness. Her website is susannicholas.org. Dr. Nicholas is a former clinical fellow in cardiothoracic surgery at Stanford University and a former general surgery resident and research fellow at UCSF Medical Center. You didn't get a $500,000 scholarship to be on the polo team, did you? Oh, you don't know about that. Sorry. I can tell you don't think it's funny. I'm sorry. The University of San Diego has been doing some wonky things. She also earned her executive MBA from Emory University Gazetta Business School. And after that, you founded a healthcare company and worked as a healthcare equity investment analyst and began a career as a pharmacokinetics chemist. I love it. You are obviously a woman with great intelligence, education, depth, and I found editing your book to be really illuminating and very articulate and thoughtful about some things that are not so easy to describe. So could you explain what exactly happened to you and what led to you having an out-of-body experience?
Sure. Thank you, Stephanie. So for me, it really stemmed from carrying a lot of emotional trauma from childhood. I grew up in rather, desperate conditions. I am the daughter of a 17-year-old mom, and I was her second child. We lived in a very difficult situation. And I think I had my first emotional, spiritual traumas from that early familial relationship, which is very unstable. And I carried that with me for so long that I didn't know it was separate from me, meaning that I could do anything about it. I'd always felt that pain of my childhood, and it had been with me my entire life. And what I went about doing in life was trying to have academic and career achievements to validate me so I could feel good enough or enough. There's this I had this lack of enoughness, whether it was being lovable enough, good enough, having enough resources, enough money, enough support. And I spent my entire life trying to get away from it. I would move geographically, and I would try to move up educationally to try to get away from my past. And I got to a point where I couldn't climb anymore, meaning that I had achieved everything that I had imagined and more, and I still had that emptiness in me, that void. And that is what I believe really led to my conscious awakening.
So what you're saying is you did everything humanly possible to make yourself good enough. And then you had this, you were at the existential end of your rope there. right?
Exactly.
I mean, so were you plunged into a kind of a state of despair? Is that how you would describe that?
Yes. And I would say even further, Stephanie, when I was in my clinical fellow in cardiothoracic surgery, and I really thought I had achieved everything that I wanted to in my career, it was just a matter of practicing and like continuing on the same path, but I had already reached that level. I tried to take my own life. And I think that was the first wake-up call, that all the achievements could not fill the void, the emptiness. It was really a hollowness that resonated throughout my own being, and that no achievement, no title, no amount of money could fill that. And it took me a number of years to actually wake up, but I had my first inklings. I think I first heard my soul, my first inner voice, my first awareness that I was more than a physical person when I tried to take my own life. I felt that I heard my inner voice for the very first time.
So my recollection of that scene is that you was it very early one morning or was it late one night? You had been at the hospital and you had taken some drugs from one of the rooms where all the residents or fellows would hang out, and you drove out in your automobile and parked somewhere in the away from traffic, took them, and you kind of were drifting off. So what was supposed to happen? You were just going to go to sleep and never wake up? Is that what was supposed to happen?
Yeah, that was what was supposed to happen. I had this idea that...
But then what happened?
Well, let's just say the anesthetic wore off, and I regained myself. So there was a moment in time where I was rigid, where I describe it as I turned to stone. And in that period, I began to wake up, where I decided I was going to fight to live. And that came from something much deeper than what was going on in my mind. That had to come from somewhere deeper, because I felt ready to go, that life really didn't have any more surprises for me, and that I had tried everything that was imaginable to feel good and to feel worthy and to feel that I was enough, and it didn't work. And
there's a very famous story about oh God, I'm going to blank on his name now. The guy who invented the geodesic. He became a Buckminster Fuller. Have you heard this story?
I don't know if I do.
He was going to kill himself also. He was going to jump off a bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And right as he was about to do it, he basically surrendered. And he decided that he was going to make his whole life about service to other people. Since he didn't want it, he was just going to give it to other people. And he became a great, great teacher of consciousness. And a very prolific inventor. Yeah. I feel like that's kind of what happened to you. Would you say that your soul wants you to be here?
Yes, and I've learned a great deal since then about what I'm doing here, and I no longer have that in me. I had a depth of sadness. I could not describe it, but it was always with me. And I began to understand what that was about and how to transform that. And in that process, I learned why I am here. And it wasn't a surgeon, which is not a bad thing, but it was to do my conscious work.
Right. So you began working on a different level. You began working on yourself emotionally, and
it wasn't immediate. Yeah.
Healing. What exactly was shifting in you that subsequently led to you having multidimensional experiences?
So my surgical experience, that transitioned me out of clinical medicine. That was a career life shift. Like what I was going to do in my life was going to change, but I didn't know how or what I was going to do, but I felt that I had to change that. And so I made a big move from living in the Bay Area in Palo Alto, and I moved to Atlanta. And then I was still in that idea that I had to work and earn a living. And I said, if I'm not going to do clinical medicine, I'm going to do the business side of medicine. And so I went to business school. And I felt like I was back on the hamster wheel, trying to figure out what achievement, what job title, how much money would make me feel happy. In that process of doing all of that, I gave birth to my son. And when he was about 2 years old, I was back at that place where I wasn't sure that I was going to make it. Mm. And so I had made a few major transitions, but that even wasn't it. And so here I am again wondering, what is it? Whatever this it is, what is it? And I went to bed one night and I was crying all the time. I had put on 25 extra pounds. I just was unhappy. And I went to bed one night and I wished that I could go home. And I didn't know what that meant or where it was, but I wanted to get out of here. And then I felt myself leave my own body. And I had an experience that I was flying. And I remember thinking, I don't remember ever flying in a dream before. I heard people talk about it, but was this what they were talking about? But what I recognized was I wasn't flying in the sense that I had imagined it. I didn't have like my arms spread or sprout wings or anything. But I was flying as energy. When I realized I didn't have arms or legs, or I wasn't in my embodiment anymore, I became afraid. And I heard a voice tell me not to look down. Because what I felt that I was flying over was a city. In my mind, it created a city of lights, and I felt that I was just soaring over it. Didn't know how, but I was, and I was acutely aware, more so than in this awake reality. It felt more real than this.
Oh, that's really interesting.
And that is what woke me up. I was like, wait, I felt like clear as a bell.
So you're like looking at yourself and you're going, oh no, I have no arms. And you're like, oh no, I looked down, I'm falling.
What really happened was when I looked down, I realized I wasn't flying over a city.
Right.
That I was, I felt that I was just in the cosmos. And that's what scared me. And it wasn't that I didn't have arms or legs or I couldn't perceive a body, but that I couldn't perceive the world around me. Mm. And that shook me, and I felt fear. And as soon as I felt that fear, I found myself back in my bed, back in my body. Now, and I lied there wide awake. It was the middle of the night. I was sweating profusely. Oh, wow. Yeah. And I said, if I ever get to fly again, I will not be afraid. And now I've been traveling for 7 or more years now.
That's amazing.
It's been a wonderful experience.
So do you think you pop back in your body because you fear is a lower vibration?
Yes. And it takes a high vibrational frequency. It takes a certain awareness to what I say to reach the flight enabling frequency. Like for your soul to travel, you have to reach a level of awareness. Now, I by no means had I sustained a level of awareness when I was in my deep sad state and I was ready to die. But it came from a desperation of needing to know why I was on the planet and what was my purpose. And so I think that questioning of self and that looking at life and wondering what this is all about, that was enough to get me out, to stay out and to have, an expanded awareness and an expansion of consciousness has required many changes and evolutions and shifts in my frequency to sustain that.
Does your body always react dramatically when you come back in?
No, it did when I was first traveling because imagine like a high vibrational, like a sound frequency that shatters a glass. That's, you know, that's the frequency significantly high enough to shatter glass. There's an attunement. So there's an attunement that is required of the physical to sustain soul travel, because it's at a very high frequency. It's at a high vibrational resonance. And so there's changes in your body that must occur for you to sustain it. And what I mean by that, you know, you have to kind of clean it up. You know,
food, alcohol,
exactly,
water, sleep,
exactly,
conflicts and arguments.
You got to take care of yourself, and you got to get your mind right. You know, what I mean by that is quiet the mind, to be able to have a relationship with yourself. And when you master that, then that type of multidimensional travel is available to you at will. I mean, you can travel anytime you do. We all do. It's just that we're not conscious of it. We're kind of weighed down by life.
Yeah.
So, you know,
how do you, when you're traveling, I have the great advantage of having read your book, so let me just describe a couple of things to the readers, okay? So if you read this book, what you'll discover in it is that she talks about the things that she's learned while she's been having these flights out of her body at night for 7 years. And it's almost like you've been taken on these journeys by your soul or some other kind of guide and shown different things. And sometimes they're even tricking you. Describe some of the experiences you've had that were startling and unexpected, I guess.
Sure. And I wouldn't say tricking, but I would say testing. Just like we have experiences on Earth that challenge us, there are challenges in your energy life too, like in your spiritual life. And we're all here to mature our soul, mature our energy, the component of us that is energy, to raise that vibrational frequency of our energy, so that we can transcend this dimension and land in another higher frequency dimension for our next incarnation. And for me, I realize that just like we have work to do here and challenges to overcome and fears to kind of get rid of, and, you know, emotional traumas to release, we have the same thing on the ethereal planes. And so you'll be tested. Your fears will be tested. And I tell you what, I'll give you an example. At one point I was out of my physical self, and I was in a situation that it appeared that I was being chased by wolves.
Yeah.
And my first instinct was to feel fear and to run. Well, I realized that I was in my energy body. Like, I wasn't in my physical body. The surroundings weren't familiar, like, meaning that it was like my regular life, but it seemed like it was an Earth-like setting, but it wasn't a place that I recognized. And so I was aware. I said, you know, wait a second, this isn't Earth. I'm not really being chased by wolves.
And even if I was, I don't have a body, so I can't.
Exactly.
Right?
And I tell you, what has transformed all of my challenges when I've been out is remembering that I am pure energy and I cannot be destroyed. Every scenario that I've been in a, you know, major earthquake situation. I've been, you know, just kind of in difficult, weird places, sometimes very enlightening places, sometimes very beautiful. And anytime I'm out, I have to remember that I'm pure energy. And no matter what the circumstance looks like, or what the scenario, what the scene appears to be, that I'm pure energy. And once I remember that, I can transform it. And so when I had the wolves, they looked like these ethereal, like ghostly wolves chasing me. And I stopped and I said, wait a second, you know, they cannot harm me. I'm pure energy. And as soon as I did that, that image of that wolf transformed into like a being of my guide, of a guide, of love. And it was just a test. And so there are tests of your fears and beliefs, and there's also tests of your frequency. So there are planes of existence outside of our third dimension that is very dense and physical. And as you get further out, there's less dense realms. They look less and less like your earthly life and have fewer comparisons.
Now, you have a chapter in your book where you describe going to a lower frequency version of Earth. And this was fascinating to me because I have a feeling that a lot of people who have, like when people describe that they're in a hospital having a surgery and that they're standing over their body looking at it, I have a feeling that they're in a place like this.
Yes. And I call these, some people call them astral planes, or in my book, you and I wrote this out together, Stephanie, kind of Earth 3.0 versus Earth 2.9 or Earth 3.1.
Or 1.9. So we're Earth 1.
Yeah, so I say Earth 3.0. Yeah, I say, okay.
Yeah, or 0.9. And so if it's really close, it might feel a little bit better. Now, why would I want to, I mean, it's an experience to go to a lower one, right? And I kind of get the feeling that some people live right here in this dimension, and because they're at a lower vibration, some days I feel like I'm almost invisible to them or something. Like I'm walking down the street and maybe they can't see me, you know?
Well, Stephanie, you raise a very good point. And one thing that I would like to ask you, maybe whoever's listening, is, have you ever gone to a neighborhood, a home, a country, a place where you didn't feel right, where it felt like things were denser or slower, or felt like things were more elevated and you were uncomfortable, like you're not in this place yet, or you felt like, this doesn't feel good, like I got to get out of here kind of situation?
Yeah.
So we have different, just like we have on Earth, we have different, people are living at different frequencies. Some people are living in poverty and all sorts of fear. And some people are they're living in a place where they are, expanding the edge of the universe, where their expansion is so great, where they're trying to invent or create or be, where they're literally at the leading edge of creation. And this is on this planet. When you think of like Elon Musk or Oprah Winfrey, or Virgin, why am I blanking on his name, of Virgin Atlantic?
Richard Branson.
Richard Branson. Like, when you think of people that are really on the cutting edge of existence, that are creators, that create music, that create all sorts of art, or inventions, and they're on the leading cutting edge of creation.
Right.
And then you see people that are embroiled in drama, and poverty, that are fighting and killing each other, and they're embroiled in hate.
But just being wealthy doesn't mean you have a high vibration, does it?
No. But I'm talking about the creation part. And but one of your, to your point, Stephanie, when you do elevate out of that density, a lot of times you also release limiting beliefs about money, and thus you do have wealth. And it's not because you're rich, but you have wealth, like of your person, of your relationships, of your imagination, of your ideas. There's a continuum. It's not just money, but money is on that continuum.
Right.
And you find that when you're at that leading edge of creation, when you are connected with the source of the universe and the source of all that all is, and you have an understanding and you embody that, then money is just one of the things that comes with it.
Right. You can make it if you need it.
Exactly. Right? Or it's all around you.
That resourcefulness of knowing that what you see is not, I was having a conversation with a college student a couple of days ago, which I do from time to time as an alumni of my college. And 19, 20-year-old guy, sweet guy. And you know, he's only a sophomore, you know, he's trying to imagine his whole life ahead of him or whatever. And I said, I was giving him like a little map. I was like, this is what'll happen here, and this is what'll happen here. And I said, this is one thing you'll never have to worry about, you know, like, because I already know that for you to have created what you already have, you've mastered the skill that is required, that you never have to be, you know,
experience certain things. Yes.
Because you know how to talk to people, you know how to create ideas, you know how to read and write, and you know, like he mastered the stuff that's like the basic survival in our culture. And what was beautiful about me being able to say that to this kid is that I'm sure that my soul gave me that experience so that I would know that about where I'm at too. There is a map forward from here, you know, for each of us. And I feel that that is what your book does also, right? So you're kind of playing that role for the rest of us, you know, because it really isn't very many people. It may be that we have out-of-body experiences while we're sleeping, but we may not remember them. And it may be that we're not having out-of-body experiences of the same kind that you are. Yours are very multidimensional. They're all lucid. You remember them. Do you wake up in the morning and write them down, or how do you do that?
I do. And in the beginning, when I began traveling, I would draw what I experienced. You know, I would draw the scenes that I would fall into, and I would write about it. Initially I wrote a blog, but I kept journals, and I would write all this stuff down because I couldn't hardly believe it. You know, it was like nothing that I'd ever experienced. Now when I travel, it's different because firstly, I'm better now, meaning that I'm in my purpose, I'm in my power now. And the shifts that I'm making are different. They're energetic shifts, and it's really me planning my next incarnation at this point. And when I come back, what stays with me are the lessons or the messages. And so I've been asking about making my ascension out of this third dimension. And I've been tasked with doing the work, the internal, the introspective work of it. There's a physical part of it. There's something that I need to create in this life, almost like a legacy. And I've been getting clear on my emotional work, and that I can make my ascension. It doesn't mean that I stop and I kind of loaf around and you know, do nothing. No, I'm here to fulfill my contract. We all have a soul contract. And then but I know that I'm gonna leave well. Like I don't fear that I'm going to either repeat this type of incarnation again, a third dimensional life, or a lower vibrational life. That I will be somewhere above this, out of this, and I will not be cycling through the same dense constructs again. And I have been at peace. And it wasn't even when I was writing the book. I mean, I was asking for that when I was writing The Duality of Being and going through the process of editing it and publishing it and promoting it. But it's been even more recent than that I have been assured of my ascension. And so it's not because I do XYZ many deeds or this purpose or that or have awareness. It's the continued emotional shifts of that I continue to make that has assured my ascension. And we can all do that. But most of us, we settle for the default condition. We die in fear, and we end up repeating lives.
You know, it's so fascinating. I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking about what a good student you are, you know, both in medical school and getting a master's degree. Like that in a way is like training for you learning to be a good soul student, you know. Right? I mean, you're having lessons, it sounds like. And you're good at that. That's what your soul does. You know,
right. And each of us has something. We all have something in us. We all have greatness within us.
Yeah.
We all have something, a gift, you know, whatever you want to call it. But very few of us do the work of revealing it.
Mm.
And so,
well, life goes so quickly.
It is, but I'm telling you, conscious work, especially now on the planet, that there's an acceleration of awakenings, there's a shift in the planet's frequency, that there's no excuse. We can all wake up in our daily lives.
That's
It's not
beautiful.
something that you have to, devote your life to solitude or, go meditating all day or repeat the life of Buddha or anyone. You can do it in your daily life, in your daily work. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. But what we can do is when we have our moments of time by ourselves, that could be in the shower, that could be before you go to bed at night, that could be while you're preparing a meal, just to be quiet and begin to build a relationship with yourself. One of the biggest ways that I see is that when people are in nature, they could be going for a run, they could have their dog out, whatever. They're blasting noise through their earbuds or their earphones, and they're not just being. And that's a missed opportunity that each of us can have a little piece of every day with ourselves and develop a relationship with ourselves. And we neglect to do that.
So
we inundate ourselves with distractions.
Taking a walk that doesn't have a destination, no purpose, just moving and being with yourself.
Right, and just communing, being with nature, getting back. And it just, what I'm saying, if you're going to go for a run or a walk or a jog, even if you do have a destination or a purpose in mind, just be quiet with yourself on that journey. If you're driving somewhere, if you're commuting, whatever it is, you're sitting on a bus, most of us cannot stand to be with ourselves. And so we constantly drown out our inner voice, our inner soul, with any number of distractions.
I wonder though, in listening to your story, would you have been able to get out without the pain? Like, I mean, maybe I'm missing the whole point, but it's almost like you had to want it, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I think we're all struggling on this planet. No matter where you are on your ascension path, we are all struggling. We all came here with something to overcome, a number of things. And so, yes, it's more than the pain. It's more than the sensations of the physical body. It's the longing for truth, for understanding of thyself. It's like wanting to know more than anything, like you would sacrifice your own life to know this truth. You must want to know who you are and that you're much more than this reality that you've created for yourself on earth.
Do you feel that your higher self or your soul is more you than your body and your personality?
Yes. And for a number of years, I felt out of my body. I've always, I've been caring for my body, and I've been acknowledging it and thanking it for carrying me to this physical life. But for many years, I felt out of myself, I had a very loose attachment to myself. I was ready to let my physical go. And through my awakening, I've learned to embrace her more and to appreciate the body that I have, and that what it allows me to have a life here. Even though I'm more than it, or it is not all of me, it is still part of me. And it was many years I didn't quite acknowledge that, and I never really spoke to my body, never asked it what it wanted or needed, and I just took it for granted. And I don't do that any longer. And I used to, have kind of like terrible, I had angioedema, like I would be swollen at times or have pains here and there. And I would just get angry about it. And I would never stop and think, well, what is my body telling me? Like there was a message from my soul that my body was translating in this way or interpreting in this way. And I never bothered to ask what that was about. And now that I've developed a relationship with myself and I can have a quiet mind and I'm not inundated with distractions 24/7, me and me have a good relationship now.
Now
And
you've also become a healer, which is amazing.
yes, exactly.
Do you
Exactly.
do healing work with people?
I do. I became so one of the things about waking up is you realize what your metaphysical powers are. And we all have them. We all, at the very least, we know that we have intuition and we have the power to create. We are creators. We know that.
Yeah.
And we know different ways that we express ourselves in this life, what we're good at. That's part of the expression of your soul. But then there's even more than that, than like what you can do in the physical realm. We also have innate power. Our soul is energy, and it has powers of energy. Now, that could be how you move energy for me, or release energy, or help other people through that. But I became an energy healer. And I was attuned by a master who first moved energy on me, and I left out of my body, and she thought I died on her table. When I came back, she said, "Oh my gosh."
You didn't think to say ahead of time.
No, because I didn't think she would notice. I knew very little about energy healing. Let me just say that. But I didn't think that she would notice that I was gone. But she did, and she became afraid. Very shaken. Wow. And she said, if I ever wanted to learn to move energy, then she would train me. And I was not even open to that initially because I was so busy in my life. Yeah. But when, as they say, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. But I did get my attunements. And everybody moves energy. Everyone that has an attunement or the ability to move energy has their own way of doing that. Some people use crystals and different types of sound and oils.
For me, that's the fun of it, right? I mean,
right.
Figuring out what works,
And for me, it wasn't so much those things, but I was able to connect, to have a conversation with the soul of my client. So when I have children, particularly children are very easy to communicate with, but also the adults, I don't have to speak to them. I can just connect with them on a soul level and understand how I can help them. So we have like a telepathic communication. And so I didn't know that I had this. I knew when I was doing surgery that I had senses. I didn't know how to describe it. I thought I had an intuition about my patients. And I would know. I just say, I know something. But when I became an energy healer, I realized what that was about. Mm-hmm. That I was able to communicate on a soul level, but there was a time that I was unconscious of it, and now I'm very conscious and aware of it. So I can communicate with any living sentient thing. And it's not just human beings and children, it's animals and plants and the planet. I can feel it. I can sense when this planet is shifting. And so there's, we're on a living planet that has its own supreme energy, this omnipotent energy of our planet. It's miraculous, and it communicates with us. We are a part of it. And so now I've been able to feel that. I can feel the earth now, and the life that it supports.
So I'm just going to go to quickly go through some of the topics that you have whole chapters on in your book. So this is from part 3, which is called Life After Multidimensional Travel. So authenticity, like what did you learn about authenticity, just in a nutshell?
Sure. That at the end of the day, we have to be our true authentic selves. It's natural in life to try to fit in and to try to, emulate people that we want to be like. But at the end of the day, you have to just be yourself and trust in yourself and own who you truly are.
So an awake person who is in touch with their higher self can really know that.
And just be themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not that fight to be something you're not.
And relationships. I mean, if we're not our bodies, who are we having relationships with?
Well, I think the most important relationship of all is with yourself.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah, because when you actually develop that, you're never lonely.
Ah, that's
Some people,
beautiful.
we look outside of ourselves to fill that, but it's within you. You just have to have a relationship with yourself, and then you realize you don't need someone to fill the voids or that you used to, where you felt like to validate myself or to feel important or to feel good enough, I had to have someone validating me, telling me I'm beautiful, telling me I'm this, telling me I'm that, make me feel worth anything. And when you are awake, you realize that it's all within you. Relationships are nice to have. I mean, I have a relationship with my son. There are very important relationships in all of our life, but the most important relationship of all is the relationship with yourself, because that's who you're with all day. I mean, it's you and you. And most, we have an adversarial, often antagonistic relationship with ourselves. Most of us do not like ourselves. And until you can embrace who you are and love him, her, it, whatever you want to call it, then you won't be free. You'll feel lonely at times, or that you'll seek out external validation of yourself.
And interesting. So you've talked about children. You've talked about superpowers. I call them superpowers because I like comic heroes. I want to be like, Wonder Woman. So talk about thoughts. So my sense is that energy is very real, and that when I'm meditating or doing a shamanic journey, which I have done, that what's always amazing to me is that if I say move it over there, it just moves over there. Like there's no weight to it. The density is much less. And I feel like we get confused about how powerful our thinking is because it's hard to move our bodies around.
Yes.
That's when you talk about duality, I think that's one of the dualities, right?
Exactly. And you touched on a very important point, Stephanie, and that is we think that because things are solid or heavy or dense, that they're more real than the things that are just light or energy, like our thoughts. But they are so incredibly powerful because it is your thoughts that create your physical reality. So anything that has come into existence in your world, whether it's your personal world or the broader expanse of our world, began as a thought in someone's head. Everything that man, woman has built began as a thought. And you can take it even further and say anything that has come into existence on the planet, whether it be the trees, the water, the land, whatever it is, the air, that it was also a thought on some level of consciousness, on perhaps a much higher level of consciousness to bring those things into existence. But it started as an energetic thought form.
Yeah. It can take a little while.
It's extraordinarily powerful.
You can think something, or I can track, like a thing can occur and I could track back 6 months to when it was initiated,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's not, it's a thought, it's powerful, but it's not necessarily instantaneous here.
It isn't.
Yeah.
And we have an idea, we create meaning around, this idea of manifestation of I think something or I want something and I want it to come into this dimension. And we have this idea of a timing, like we want it to be fast usually. And what we have forgotten is that there's a distortion between our planetary time and then the expanse of the universe where arguably there is no time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're manifesting from an ethereal, from a cosmic level onto this planet, and it's not going to be linear, meaning like I think this and I want it to happen on Wednesday at 2:00. That's not how the universe works. And so we have to remember that, I think it was Leonardo da Vinci who was credited as saying that nature never breaks her own laws. And if we think about let's take an airplane falling from the sky. We would never once believe that the law of thermodynamics failed, that is why the plane, but it is something in the mechanics of that plane. Mm-hmm. So the same thing with our thoughts and our manifestation. There's nothing wrong with the laws of manifestation and creation. It's how we're going about it. It's something within us.
Right.
And so we have to figure that out, and that comes from what I call the process of introspection, to figure out, what am I doing that I'm creating this? Like, if I see something in my surroundings and I'm like, why am I in this situation, this scenario? Why does my life look this way?
Yeah.
I'm not going to look to the universe and say, oh, they're making a mistake. I'm going to look to me and say, what am I doing? And it's usually something that's in your energetic matrix that you have. It's a belief system. It's a thought. It's something in you. It's doubt. It's lack of confidence. It's something in you that's got a hold on your energy. And until you clear that away, you will not be able to manifest freely.
And we often will choose to associate with people who agree with our thoughts, which makes them even more amplified, right?
Our beliefs, exactly.
And then it feels like we're not responsible.
And that's the victim
helplessness, even,
Right. We in order to manifest on the highest level and to be most in tune with the source of the universal creation, you have to kind of drop that victim thing that, oh, this happened to me. Mm-hmm. It did not. There are no accidents or coincidences. Even if you say, this is not what I meant, or this isn't what I wanted, that's not the point. The point is that you created it. We often do not know how we're doing that, or we're upset that we're doing that. I know that I've created things. I'm like, what the hell? This is not what I meant, or this is certainly not what I wanted. Why am I getting exactly what I don't want?
Yes.
That I've been there. And I realize that comes from within me.
For me, it's like, why am I here again?
Exactly. Exactly. Those are scenarios in life that repeat themselves, and they're related to your feelings. Yeah. And so there's a secret about feelings that we've never learned, and that is that they will show up and keep repeating themselves, just like the scenarios that they're associated with, the patterns.
Yeah.
And so they no longer have to be felt. So if you notice when something happens, you're like, here I am again, you have a feeling associated with that.
Yeah.
And that you're going to have that feeling until you no longer have to feel it, meaning that you've mastered it. So feelings, like your thoughts, they're all energy. And you have them within you. And it's the law of conservation of energy that says energy cannot be created or destroyed. It must be transformed.
Yeah.
So that energy, those feelings within you that keeps happening, that has to be transformed. And so you must acknowledge it. So let's just say I see a scenario and here it is again. And I'm like, damn it. And I've got this feeling in me, like it's usually like anger or frustration, something.
Right.
I must ask, what is that? This is why it's vitally important to have a relationship with yourself. I must ask my soul, my energy part of me, what is that? Why does this stay with me? What is it telling me?
Right.
And usually this will take you back to some point in your life that you first felt that way. And many times that's in our childhood.
Right.
Or in our younger lives. And it's been with us for so long, it feels normal. It feels like that's just how I feel. No, that comes from something. When you were born into your physical body and you came in as an infant, you were pure love. You're pure energy. And we have been traumatized throughout life, and we carry that with us until we transform it.
Right. It could even happen while you're being born. I mean, some people are very dramatic arrivals and whatever. Fascinating. So we could go on and on and on, and maybe we should do this another time. I think we could have a productive conversation, but I feel like we've been going for at least a half an hour, maybe longer. So we should probably stop.
Okay.
So let me just point out this, your book is The Duality of Being, Perspectives from Multidimensional Travel. That's Susan Nicholas, MD. And your website is your name, susannicholas.org. This book is available on Amazon. It's available on iTunes and Barnes & Noble and a whole host of other wonderful online stores. And I think that anybody who's interested in metaphysics should definitely read this book. It's very rare that somebody can come from the perspective that you have and come back and report to us. And
what's the deal? Yeah, like what's really going on?
Yeah. And help inform the way we're living.
Exactly.
You know, it's not just like, oh, I went to the amusement park and I rode the rides and, you know, I got an adrenaline rush. Mm-hmm. Although there is a little of that. We can be voyeurs in your book. It's the implications for how we identify ourselves and who we think we are. Mm-hmm. And that is very much in becoming more fluid, where the paradigm is shifting. Yes. And so the more information we have about that kind of metaphysical reality, the more it can inform our decision making and our choices in our lives. So thank you very much for coming in and sharing with us so generously.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you.
I'm just going to end this recording, but don't you go away, Susan. Hang on one second. I just have to figure out how to end it.